Hello everybody! JGC Anime here today. We're here to review Attack on Titan Final Season Part 1. There are about 4 parts to this full final season, and today we're going to be covering Part 1, and that means episodes 1 to 16. So yeah, without further ado, let's just hop right into this. So, what is the story behind the beginning of Attack on Titan the final season? Basically, having failed his mission on Paradis, Reiner has returned to his homeland and is trying to just rehabilitate himself after the events of all those years spent on Paradis. And now he just sees these new candidates coming along and he doesn't know it, but there's some kind of things weaving behind the scenes that seem to be preparing for what looks to be an all-out war. That, and also he's also using his Titan along with the help of Zeke and a few others to try and use his Titan to fight some other wars, but those just really act as kind of like the setup to show off what we're in store for this season. So yeah, that wasn't the best story summary, but we're just gonna roll with it. So in terms of spoiler-free thoughts, I thought it was absolutely incredible. I am someone who actually didn't watch Attack on Titan's final season that much, and by that much I mean I watched the first part a long time ago, and then I never bothered with the second because I thought, oh, I'll just wait till it all comes out once it's all done. Then we had this stuff with the like movie special things, and they just wrapped up, so I'm finally gonna sit down and sit through it. So I first sat down and rewatched part 1, which back then I didn't really like that much. I thought it was just kind of meh because I didn't fully understand the implications of what was going on because I was still really new to a lot of what Attack on Titan storytelling was. But now that I've watched a lot more anime since then and I get to understand the stories a lot better, I can genuinely say this season was freaking incredible. The story was super investing, and while there are tiny bits here and there where I'm kind of lost on where things are meant to be going, overall I genuinely had a good time. The first few episodes, and by first few I mean like the first 1 to 8 or so, I don't know how many episodes it covers, but the whole beginning segment inside of Marley Reiner's home, it's freaking awesome. It's definitely some of the best writing I've seen in a long time, which isn't saying much because most of the shows I watch these days are pretty bare bones at times. But in terms of Attack on Titan, I genuinely enjoyed it, and I think I found it clear that I was enjoying this a lot more than I used to, since when I first started it, I ended up watching the first 6 episodes in a single day, which may not sound like a lot to some people, but for someone like me who does a lot of things throughout his day, the fact that I could dedicate 6 episodes worth of time to it was crazy because I was just that invested at revisiting the first part of this and realizing, dang, there's a lot of stuff I missed when I watched the first time around. Like the big whole things that go down that I'm not going to talk about here, but I might talk about in the spoiler section. But genuinely, I felt like the first 8 episodes were some of Attack on Titan's best writing, just in my opinion. It kept me invested in the story. I was super interested in seeing things, especially how we kind of learned things from the perspective of the bad guys, because up to this point we've been following the good guys, and we're just like, oh man, how are we supposed to know how to feel about things now that we've seen all this? And it genuinely is just so freaking fantastic. Then you kind of have some stuff in the middle there after episode 8, which is just kind of, it's fine. It sets things up for what's to come in the last few episodes, which are genuinely fantastic episodes, but they're just kind of fine for me. I enjoyed them plenty. There was still a lot of good setup. There's a lot of good payoff and stuff like that. But I don't know, just it kind of lost me for a little bit around there. It just kind of lost me for a little bit. But overall, I still think this was a fantastic season and just brought so much to the table. And it amazes me how much it kind of interconnects with the previous seasons, since I don't remember the previous seasons that well, but I do remember vague parts of them, and the fact that they call back to a lot of those things, it impressed me so much getting to see these characters and how their lives are affected by the events that have happened throughout the course of the story. And it's so good. It's genuinely fantastic. The writing is top notch. The character development is kind of, maybe there's not really too much character development actually now that I think about it. In fact, there's one character who's so annoying because they don't really get much character development. It's like they're trying to develop the character but not, because they're just so freaking annoying. Some people might know who I'm referring to, but I'll talk about them in the spoiler section. But overall, I do like a lot of the writing, especially with how we follow the perspective of someone completely unrelated to a lot of these things, where they just kind of know what's going on, but they don't understand it all. But again, we'll talk about some of that in the spoiler section. Just overall, this season is so much fun to watch. I'm really hoping that the second part holds up as good as the first part did, because in terms of how the writing went, I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of great moments, and the way things were handled were just super, super interesting. And yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling anything, because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about in terms of spoilers. So we're just going to hop to the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp to when the spoilers end. If you have seen the show, I'd recommend sticking around to hear my thoughts, but if you haven't, I'd recommend skipping to the end so you don't get any spoilers. But again, if you have seen it, I recommend sticking around here my thoughts. And yeah, we're going to count up from 5 and we're going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about, the way Eren is presented in this season. Now, in the past, we know that Eren was just someone who really wanted to stop the Titans, and after he learned that more people were creating Titans and sending them to them, he decided that those guys were our enemies, we gotta take them down, and it seems like he's just kind of looking for a hopeful future, and that's the way it kind of seems at first. But then in this season, it reveals that he means less about trying to defeat their enemies and try to make peace with themselves, and more just like, alright, I'm just gonna kill everything and make it so that way I can stop the Titans from being a thing anymore. And it's just like, what? Eren, are you the bad guy now? Like, it's so interesting since Eren plays a massive role in kind of being the bad guy. Especially when we first follow this character Falco, who, as I mentioned before, is kind of someone who spends a lot of his time just kind of as a sideline character. He doesn't understand everything that's gone down throughout the course of the last few seasons. And so when he sees Eren and everything like that, he's just like, wait, is everything I've been told my whole life a lie? What's going on? And it's super interesting following through his perspective on things, since he's learning about everything for the first time through Eren and Reiner and everybody else. It's so interesting seeing things from his perspective, especially with how he ends up following this other character, Gabi, who we'll get to in a little bit. Oh, we're gonna get to Gabi. But basically, he follows her, and despite everything she's doing, he's trying to keep a cool head. And it's clear that he, unlike her, is trying to fully grasp the situation, understand everything, and learn about how everything plays out, as he's realizing, maybe not everything's as I thought it was. And it's really interesting following his perspective, even though I kind of feel bad for his friends who got crushed by the events that Eren caused. But yeah, it was just super interesting how Eren in particular, going back to Eren, he basically was kind of a villain this whole season. Like, he feels more like a menace that's trying to destroy both sides, both Paradis and Marley, instead of trying to appease to one or the other. He's kind of just moving in his own direction, since apparently he's working with Zeke right now to make it so that way people on Paradis will no longer, at least people who are like subjects of Ymir, have kids anymore. It's a really interesting concept to try to like stop the whole Titan thing from happening. And it just intrigues me, since it seems like Eren is going down a completely different path than what you thought his path would be in previous seasons. And it kind of makes him the villain. Though, sometimes I think he plays into it a little too much, because there's this one segment with Armin and Mikasa, who honestly I feel like don't get enough screen time this season for how much of a role they play in Eren's life, but we'll leave that be. Basically, the two of them interact with Eren, and Eren's trying to say some stuff to them that you might think maybe he actually means it, but then he says something kind of silly. And that's that he just says, "I've always hated you, Mikasa." And I'm just sitting there like, no, you haven't. No, you haven't. You're lying, dude. Okay, now you're just bullcrap. And now that is the first time when I was listening to his little speech to them that I realized, yeah, no, that's definitely pushing it a bit too far. Not in terms of like a, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. It's more of like a, okay, you can only suspend my disbelief for so long. Yeah, I don't believe that. But yeah, it's just moments like that is where he kind of pushes himself a little too much, and it makes you think, maybe, yeah, he probably is just kind of doing this for the sake of whatever. But yeah, Eren as kind of playing a villain is definitely fun to watch, and I find myself super intrigued in seeing what kind of things will play out with this character in later storylines in this final season. And yeah, moving on past that, I want to talk about another character, and that is Zeke. Zeke is a character who I honestly didn't really acknowledge in season 3. He kind of just appeared, and I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, we know that I think he was in season 2. I might be wrong about that, but I think he was in season 2 as the Beast Titan, and then makes his physical appearance in season 3. I might be wrong about that though. But I didn't really think much about Zeke before the final season, and even while I was watching it the first time around, I didn't care too much about him. But this time around, it leaves a lot more impact, as I realized just how sad Zeke's backstory could be at times, as he ends up following in a completely different path than Eren, even though they're in the same boat due to their father being this terrible person who's trying to force this life onto them. But instead of trying to follow that path, he ends up talking with Eren And despite being on different paths with completely different mindsets, the two of them do reach the same conclusion and agree to work with one another. And I found Zeke's whole backstory behind all of that super interesting, since it seems like he really does care about Eren. It's really interesting to see, and it's made me genuinely curious about how things with Zeke will go going forward. And yeah, Zeke's a lot more interesting this time around, and I feel like that's just the case with everyone. I feel like this time around everyone is more interesting, as now I can actually take the time to fully embrace myself in the story and enjoy what I'm watching on screen, including some sad moments, such as the death of Sasha, which kind of plays to the role of a lot of the events that occur midway through this season. And it's pretty sad, I will say that, because Sasha's always been one of those characters that is just kind of like the comic relief, a character you can laugh at and have fun with. But then she dies, it's just like, oh, well, dang. Oh, come on, man. Like, it's just like a moment where you just think, wow, I cannot believe they just did that, because it just shows that they mean business this time around. In this final season, they mean business. And it's super interesting, and it leaves a lot of impact on, I'm sure, just not me, but all the characters as well, as we get to see how things play out, including like how one of the Marleyans ends up falling in love with Sasha, and after he learns who Gabi is and that she was the one who actually shot Sasha, he literally tries to hit her with a glass bottle with some of Zeke's spinal fluid that would turn her into a Titan. And it's just really interesting to see how much of an impact she made, not just on him, but also some of the other characters, like how there's this one random event with Sasha where she saves a girl who's being attacked by a Titan. Now, in the past, if you watch it, you just think, oh, it's a cool moment for Sasha, but then you realize, oh, that actually plays a pivotal role, as Sasha's parents took her in as like an adopted daughter after her own mother died. And it's just like, wow, this is really all connecting really well, and it's just kind of amazing, especially with how much of an impact Sasha's death just affects the whole story, and it's really interesting. And yeah, moving on to another thing I would like to talk about, I'd like to talk about Reiner as a character. Now, as we know, Reiner is the last one who managed to survive Paradis out of his group, and, you know, Annie's still locked up in that cage, which makes me wonder when she's gonna break out. I think she breaks out in part 2, but I haven't watched that yet, so I wouldn't know. But Annie's in there, and Bertold is dead. And honestly, it's really interesting how much the whole thing with Paradis affected Reiner, since it's clear that he deals with a lot of trauma while trying to fight all these guys, as it affected him a lot, both mentally and physically in a lot of ways, as you can tell that he's a lot more pale and weaker than he was before, as he struggles to get sleep and a lot of other things that add a lot to his character. And it's especially interesting when he meets with Eren, who snuck on to Marley and ends up confronting Reiner right before he, you know, just kills a bunch of people. And it's really interesting how Reiner's just like, please, Eren, just kill me to get me out of this. And it's just like, you can tell how much of a mental toll it affects Reiner. And I just found that really cool how they approached that. But yeah, moving on to some more negative stuff for now, I guess, quickly. I'd like to talk about something that kind of affected me, not a lot, but a little bit, and that is the CGI this season. As many people are very, very much aware, Mappa was the one who took over for the role of Attack on Titan the final season, and I don't know, just the CGI they decided to use for the Titans in this season was kind of iffy. Sometimes I didn't really care too much because it still looked cool, but there were many times, like in the first episode where the Titans charge a enemy base, that it just looks kind of weird. It doesn't look bad, it's just that it looks very strange to look at. Like, I don't know, it was very weird to stare at. It reminded me a lot of how I felt when I was watching the Chainsaw Man anime, where it's not bad, but it's just kind of off-putting. It just feels a bit strange, especially compared to the previous seasons, which used 2D animated Titans, which I understand why they would do 3D ones with the CGI. You know, it saves time and money and stuff like that. I get it, but I don't know, just something was off about it. It didn't really hit for me at times, and there were many moments where I just thought, okay, that looks just plain up stupid. But it's not the worst thing ever. It's just kind of there. But moving on past that, going back to another positive I'd like to talk about. I want to talk about how the factions of this story play into everything. And by that I mean the different groups. You know, in the past, we were able to tell who was good and evil, because, you know, our main guys were good, the enemies who were creating Titans were evil. That was clear as day. However, this time around, since we got to follow the people on Marley for a bit at the beginning, and we got to understand their thought process, it was actually super fascinating, and it really made me think, huh, I don't really want a lot of these people to die. I actually kind of like some of these people. And that just shows just how much of an impact a story can do, especially with how Eren kind of switched sides to his own side. Him and Zeke decide to work together with their own faction of people. So it goes from like a 1v1 to a 1v1v1. And it's so interesting how there really isn't a good or bad guy anymore. It's just people. It's just people trying to fight for what they think is right. And I think that's just fantastic. I think it's amazing. And the way it's all handled kept me super invested. I'm just like, dude, when did Attack on Titan have such great writing? Was I just blind when I was watching the previous seasons? Was I just kind of rolling with it? Because this is just genuinely great writing, and it just gets me so excited for part 2. Though, not everything in this season is great. I would like to talk about one character in particular who really got on my nerves. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who is affected by this, and that is Gabi. I hate Gabi. She is so freaking annoying with how rude she acts to all of our main characters, and how she casually just does all of this stuff, acting like, oh yeah, I'm in the right here. You demons and devils are terrible people. I hate you all. It's just like, yeah, shut up. Just shut up. And I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a character that is so driven by what's been nailed into her brain that she can't seem to accept anything else. But I don't know, she's just really annoying. And I get that she's trying to grow and understand things, but at the same time, I don't feel like she's grown that much. In fact, I feel like Falco, who's just kind of been in the background while she's been doing things, and just kind of helps every now and then, has grown and understood more than she has. And I don't know, she was very annoying. I hope she gets better in part 2, but right now she is by far one of my least favorite characters in all of Attack on Titan. Not just because she killed Sasha. She is already in a bad position because of that, but at the same time, she's just a really frustrating character in general. But yeah, overall though, I definitely really enjoyed this first part, and it gets me excited to see where the rest of the story is going to go from here, because it was just that freaking good. And while there was kind of a mixed middle where they were trying to build up to the final conclusion where Zeke turns all of Levi's companions and comrades into Titans, Levi is also really cool in this season. A lot of characters get a lot of really awesome moments, but him in particular gets a few cool moments here and there. But yeah, right now, he's out there somewhere, I don't know where. He nearly got blew up by Zeke, who just got stuffed into a Titan, who then ran off. And Eren is about to go against Reiner, but basically, a lot of stuff's going down. A lot of things are going down, and I'm very excited to see what part 2 has in store, since this whole season has been an absolute ride so far, an incredible ride. And I'm so excited to see what Eren, Zeke, and everybody else does in the future. And I also really hope that Mikasa and Armin get a bit more attention in the next part, or something like that, because I genuinely think they are great characters, and I would love to see what kind of effect they have on Eren's plans and all of that in the near future. But yeah, that's all I have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video, and what are my final thoughts? Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good season. It wasn't perfect, but overall, it was just fantastic. I think the writing was top tier. It was incredible, and it gets me very excited to see where things go from here. I really hope to stick through to the end, and I'm very excited to see where things go from all of this. And yeah, with all that said, I give Attack on Titan, the final season, part 1, a 9 out of 10. Fantastic overall. There were a few ups and downs here and there, but overall, just so freaking good. I want more of this. Please give me more. It was so freaking good. And yeah, that's all I really have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also can do anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!